Interesting.
Migrants back to Texas, offering free one-way plane and bus tickets to other states. So Abbott sends migrants to New York, then New York spends all this money, millions, to send them back to Texas.
So they're sending people to New York just to spend money to send them back. Talk about waste of taxpayer money. Talk about...
The Big Apple has spent more than...
So Texas has sent around 30,000 people to New York on buses, and it looks like New York is now trying to send them back. In fact, asylum seekers here can not only get a free plane or bus ticket anywhere in the world, after their shelter stays expire, they're forced to reapply for housing at a location where these are handed out, revealing that even though New York is America's largest sanctuary city, our leaders don't want people staying here.
Wait a minute. So you're saying America's a sanctuary city? If you don't know what that is, it's basically law enforcement can't come and ask you about your status. And even if these guys are saying we are so pro this and pro that, underneath the things, all of the policies and stuff, they're sending them back and out. And wait a minute, I smell something fishy.
For some reason.
Governor Greg Abbott might have thought that he had the last laugh when he bussed tens of thousands of migrants from his state to New York City. But the Big Apple's mayor, Eric Adams, might have one-upped him. Adams is sending 4,500 arrivals back to the Lone Star State.
Adams is also returning migrants to Illinois, Florida, and...
It's almost like it's a game with these people's lives as well. Let's say some of these are actually genuine. Well, let's say most of them are genuine asylum seekers, right? They're here legally seeking asylum. And they're just like ping-ponging them back and forth because we don't want this, but we don't want this. So they're just toying with people's lives. That pisses me off more than anything. I don't really care about who won and if it's Trump or Kamala or any of that. But I do care about these people being toyed with.
Colorado. Abbott's office blasted Adams' move, saying, quote, hypocritical Mayor Adams said busing migrants is morally bankrupt.
I voted for Trump because of the economy.
Much like the trend nationally, many New York voters this year were driven by the economy and immigration.
New York City closing largest migrant shelter while seeking hotel contracts for migrant housing. What the fuck's the point? Again, it's that ping pong. I'm sure there's a bunch of corruption up there now, just going like, oh, let's just close the houses. And like, oh, bro, do you have a hotel or something? Oh, yeah, bro, I have a hotel. No worries, we can just put a good contract there. Oh, yeah, what do you think? 200 a day? Sounds good, right? Government money to you, scratch back, scratch.
Especially after Texas Governor Greg Abbott started busing migrants here 2 years ago.
Throughout his campaign, President-elect Donald Trump promised sweeping changes to what he painted as an out-of-control immigration system. And now, with his presidency secured, immigration advocates in New York City say they're bracing for what's to come.
Suddenly, it's not a sanctuary city all of a sudden, as they want to send the people back to Texas.
Sounds sketchy to me. Really, really sketchy.
So, as New York continues to tout its sanctuary city status, it's secretly doing everything possible to help people leave. But what nobody's talking about is that this is just the latest example of how the asylum crisis has failed to bring about any meaningful improvements in the lives of asylum seekers. Because although over 200,000 have come to New York after our city offered them the American dream and a place to stay, the place to stay kicks them out after 1 or 2 months before most asylum seekers have had time to get jobs or plug into the local economy.
Again, I'm going to stand on, I really don't like that this politics is playing with the people's lives that they have accepted in to be allowed to seek asylum. If they're like a bunch of illegal immigrants, I can understand a lot of the frustration and I can understand wanting to send them back. However, if they are asylum seekers and they're legally there and then they're being treated like crap, so that they can't even get jobs and get plugged into the economy, as he said, it's very difficult to even like the politicians at the top there sitting and going, oh, we are a sanctuary city, but we aren't a sanctuary. And what I mean about that is, it doesn't really matter how much you say you're something, unless you're actually being that thing. So if they had 100,000 jobs, Just saying, that's an arbitrary number. Yes, you can argue with me, oh, it's very difficult to get that many. It doesn't matter. I'm giving an arbitrary example. You had 100,000 jobs and 100,000 immigrants coming in, and they're all picking rubble or picking trash or anything. Doesn't matter. At least you're adding them into the economy. They might get different jobs when they learn the language better or when they get more introduced to New York. It's a positive experience. People get to see them work hard.
Something we were all told wasn't going to happen here, as our leaders bragged about how our city had thousands of jobs just waiting to be filled by people getting off buses right here at the bus terminal. But if you visit any of the city's 200 asylum shelters, you'll see that asylum seekers are facing just as much poverty and joblessness here in America as they were in their home countries. And honestly, it's really sad to see thousands of able-bodied people who were lied to with no way to better their lives by working and
That's another thing. Hey, come to us. We got work. We got things for you. Cool, we're coming. They come and they're like, by the way, have you thought about fuck off?
living independently. And whether or not you are for or against the asylum crisis, it should be pretty obvious that in order to get so many people to travel to a place which has no opportunity for them, you've got to tell them something that's not true. And observers say that's what's happened in New York, as thousands of people were allowed to move into our shelter system believing in a future that doesn't exist, only to be moved out of it a few months after they get here because the shelter system is full, and new people who believe there's a future here for them also need to stay there for 1 or 2 months as well. Which brings us to the real reason why New York has this bus program. Once people figure out that this is not some magical land of opportunity, they're faced with the reality that staying here isn't gonna help them.
And then what do? They either have to go back or go to some other place in America. And honestly, the one thing I do think about America is that a lot of states are much nicer than New York. And I'm not saying like there aren't nice places there, but I don't understand the appeal. Like, yes, I've been there. Before you go, you haven't even been here. You don't understand what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, I have been there. I didn't like it. It's a concrete jungle. It's stressful. It's rats and smelly and sewer and everything. But if you're telling everybody that comes over there, hey, we have jobs, we have opportunities, it's the American dream. Even Americans aren't even living the American dream anymore. They can barely afford to have a roof over their heads. So let's maybe fix those things. But if you are saying, hey, come over here, maybe don't fuck them. If you're saying, come here, they're still humans. It's like my little sister moving to America for a better opportunity just to be, oh yeah, we got kicked out, now we're living on the street for no reason.
Something our leaders have known would happen all along, yet because of New York's proud progressive values, admitting our policies just waste money while failing to help.
Look at him just chilling and jogging past all the homelessness. No care in the world.
People isn't on the table. And as you're about to see, while New York is quietly helping people leave, it's also doubling down on sanctuary city policies it already has proof aren't working. As
Thank you for reporting this.
Reaction to President Trump's re-election, which most people here thought wasn't gonna happen.
Dancing for re-election. Oh, the air flights. Now we can jump tall high.
So
faster.
Here we are at the Port Authority bus terminal where around 4,500 asylum seekers have gotten tickets back to Texas, some on the very buses they arrived on. And the irony here is that...
Hold up. We are now arriving into New York City Terminal. If anybody's going off the bus, this is the Terminal 3. Walk down the stairs, out, you'll be in the city center. And then the people are like, oh my God, we've just arrived in New York. Oh, that's nice. And for all the immigrants that was on the bus here, which is 95% of you guys, you're going to be shipped right back on the same bus to Texas. There's a change of plans. Everybody's being shipped back to Texas. But what's the point of that whole thing? Like, what's the point? They just bust from one place to another just to get screwed back in the same bus.
New York, the sanctuary city, is proving that it's not able to help people, even though that's what it claims its purpose is.
Maybe they don't want to.
What it can do is set people up for failure while still being able to claim, hey, we're progressive. We still have a right to shelter. We're still a sanctuary city. We're still able to help you, which might help the non-asylum seekers that run this place feel good about themselves.
And maybe there's some money in there. Come on, people. We all know that money runs things. So if they're saying, hey, come over here, we have this and this and this many spots, woohoo, maybe there's some governmental funds that's going to some person's friend that has the hotel and owns some sort of like food company, catering company, whatever. Because they don't really care about the people. It seems like there's something else here. There's something else here.
Basically makes New York a sanctuary city in name only.
New York City sending 4,500 migrants back to Texas, offering free one-way plane and bus tickets to other states. So Abbott sends migrants to New York, then New York spends all this money, millions, to send them back to Texas. The Big
No
Apple
reason.
has spent
Absolutely no reason.
So it's important to understand the overarching principle behind both of these bus programs. Everybody that got on a bus from Texas to come to New York did so willingly, but they probably wouldn't have done so willingly had they known that things would turn out different and that they'd just be getting on another bus to go back to Texas willingly after a couple of months. And
if they're promised a better place because it's a sanctuary state, and let's cut all the political crap here, okay? Let's say you as a human being were told, hey, do you want to go from city A to city B, because in city B it's better and you got opportunities and you can get work. And then you can get your own apartment and a lover and a child and a beautiful life. And you say, yes, of course I would go from city A to city B. Now, when you hit city B, you look at everything around you and you go, this is not different from city A. Well, at least we're going to get that job. 2 months later, nothing's changed. And they say, hey, would you want to go from city B to city A because it's so much more beautiful in city A? And then the cycle continues. Wouldn't you be pissed off? Wouldn't you be frustrated?
people are just trying to go to a place where they think they're going to have the best opportunity for themselves and their families. That's why they came to New York in the first place, and now that's why they're leaving New York in the second place. But that's not supposed to be how any of this worked out, because we've had over 200,000 people come to New York, which had its sanctuary city doors wide open and looked like it was going to be a place where people could start chasing after the American dream, which they were allowed to believe was going to happen when they got off buses and moved into our shelter system. But underneath the veneer of care that this city was putting forth was a big lie about opportunities that awaited people here, like jobs and a better future that just haven't existed ever. And now people have to leave and try to go find it somewhere else. And they're doing it with the city's help. But look at this, asylums.
Governor announces 18,000 jobs available to asylum seekers and migrants as part of statewide initiative to move individuals out of shelters and into independent living. Isn't that what we've been talking about the whole goddamn time? Isn't that what the whole point is about being an asylum seeker and coming in here? They don't want to be on government welfare, or governmental money. It's not fun. Do you think you want to feel like an invalid? Do you think you want to feel like somebody who can't do anything by yourself? No, that's no fun. You work, you feel good about yourself, you have a house, you have a lover, a family.
Seekers weren't the only ones who believed there was something good here waiting for them. As of October, there still should be 18,000 jobs out there for people who might live in shelters at the moment. But if those jobs are really out there and available to asylum seekers, it would be great for those companies or those businesses to start hiring, because we've got people living in tents outside of the shelters they've been evicted from because they've got nowhere else to go. And certainly a job from one of the 400 employers identified by the local government here would really help them pay rent and get off the streets. And certainly a job that someone could work.
And also being on the street and being dehumanized and being seen as lesser will also make that circle keep going. That cycle just keeps continuing, because you go to a job interview, or you can't really get yourself completely fresh and have a nice cut and everything, so you don't look your best. You look a slight bit disheveled. You won't get that job because somebody else came in and they were fresh and not disheveled. They had a house, they had everything, cleaning products and everything that's much easier to get a hold of. I'm not saying you can't go to a gym and freshen up and stuff, but it's much harder when you have to get from A to B to C to D to E to F to do all the things instead of having a house doing it, like clothes washer, or shower, or shaver, or any electronic applications or applicants. It's so much more difficult for people to get on their feet if they keep being kicked while they're down. But if you hand a palm, an outstretched hand, and help them up, they can keep walking forever.
work at and provide for themselves would negate the ticket program New York City has to help people get on buses and leave town. Unless, of course, the job market here isn't as rosy as people are being told it is.
Oopsie.
And these jobs either aren't available or the positions have already been filled. And if the job market were as great for asylum seekers as we're being told, we probably wouldn't see the effects of mass unemployment at every single shelter in town, which proves that there is an opportunity here for them, and they were told that there was.
And it goes back to
So lied to.
again. Now New York has seen that they can't handle the situation because not only just the amount of people, but also economically as well. So I can tell you for a fact that in Texas, we're going to continue busing them to these sanctuary cities because, again, these are sanctuary cities. They did welcome immigrants from day one.
So all of this opportunity that people were led to believe was here turned out to be a big lie. And this is evident in the city's own reporting. Remember, over 200,000 asylum seekers have come here. We've got tens of thousands of jobs available, but only 2,000.
Anybody else feel this sketchy here? New York City has only connected 2,000 migrants with jobs, as thousands more overwhelm the city shelters. Remember in the former article when they said it was 1,500 jobs at least, and that was one article. So where are the other 1,300 jobs? And I'm not saying, oh, the government should do everything. No. I'm saying, if I say, come to my house, there's food, there's drink, everybody's going to have a good time. I've promised this thing. And if you now come to my house and I don't deliver these things, you're going to be like, oh, so where's the cake and where's the food? Where's the drink? I'll be like, oh, no, I just had one drink on the table for everybody to share. So there's no drink. There is no food. They were lied to. And it's very interesting, the whole narrative that they want to be seen as a shelter city or shelter state or whatever you want to call it, and yet they don't provide any sanctuary state, and yet they don't provide the sanctuaries of which they are saying they are. Very, very interesting. It's very ooh.
People, according to this article, have actually been connected with employment. And although some asylum seekers have to wait a month and others have to wait 6 months to get work authorization, this crisis is 2 years old at this point, and only 2,000 people have been connected with jobs. That's not a system that's working out in anybody's favor. And if someone moves into one of our asylum shelters and they can only stay for 1 or 2 months, but they're unable to get a job and unable to start providing for themselves, and then they have to move out, what other option do they have other than to live in a tent outside of that shelter, as some people are doing, or to get on a bus and try to make it somewhere else? Well, obviously most people are leaving, and it looks like 40.
By the way, the reason why they're living outside of the shelter is, and he said it in another video actually, that they still have to get the mail about their asylum status and stuff, so they can't be too far away. It's not like they can be in a different state or anything, and it's the easier placement to be. So just for you guys that didn't know that.
47,000 one-way tickets have been purchased in total since this program started. And 40,000 one-way tickets means that 22% of the 212,000 asylum seekers who've come here have been paid to leave in some capacity. And what that means is the asylum programs we have to care for people in New York aren't as helpful as we may have thought.
Political strategists say
seems very interesting to just a drain on resources and a drain on the people and a drain on just everything, really. It just seems like a drain.
The trend nationally, many New York voters this year were driven by the economy and immigration, especially after Texas Governor Greg Abbott started busing migrants here 2 years ago.
If you have Democrats in charge of the state, Democrats in charge of the city, and Democrats in charge of the country, if you're not happy, you kind of go to the Republican.
Now, as you're about to see, our progressive leaders, they're not paying attention to how ineffective these policies are, and they're actually about to double down on them, in spite of the fact that they aren't working, and in spite of the fact that voters in greater numbers than ever before are voicing their opposition.
Hey, did you know that drinking alcohol isn't good for you? No, I didn't know that. I'm gonna drink more alcohol. But you know that if you drink alcohol, you're gonna get sick. Nah, I don't believe that. Get super sick. The guy gets super sick, and he goes, "No, it wasn't alcohol. I'm gonna drink more alcohol." That's what this feels like. Like, these policies are like, oh, these are really bad policies. They're not working. No, they work. Just because you shout something doesn't mean it's true.
to them. And even though many people are starting to figure out that the asylum crisis isn't helping anybody, our leaders aren't of that mindset. Because here in New York, you've got an electorate that does not like Donald Trump. Remember, he lost this state. And what that means is the politicians that we have here, it's going to be their mandate to resist whatever his plans are for New York City and for immigration as a whole for this country. And although this might not be true of every district in New York State, some of which recently voted red for the first time, in New York City itself, especially places like Brooklyn that voted 80% in favor of Vice President Harris, the mandate still holds. But as you're about to see, when progressive policies aren't working, admitting that they don't work isn't part of the equation. Instead, the reason they failed is because they weren't progressive enough, or
Well, let's be completely honest. I don't think it's just one of the sides that say that when something doesn't work, it's because of another reason. It's like, it's never my fault type of thing, type of mentality. And when you have that mentality in general in America, because it's most likely developed due to capitalism, because if you say, hey, my foot is in pain after I went to the doctors, and they're like, no, we did exactly what we've been told to do, it's not our fault. Even though maybe they did something wrong, maybe there's something that's they're at fault, because then you can get sued for that. So you're very quick, it's like a very quick like blame thing. Oh, it's your fault. Oh, it's Costa Coffee or not Starbucks. Yeah, Starbucks coffee's fault that the coffee was too hot and that's why I burnt my throat. It's like, no, it's your fault for you drinking it, like chugging it, like it's a hot drink. So, yeah, it's very much a blame state, I feel.
we didn't have enough of them, or we ran out of money. Which is why New York City is about to do more of the things that aren't helping asylum seekers at all, but are in fact making their lives even tougher.
Man, poor asylum seekers.
So
They're just wanting a nice life.
The asylum crisis continues, the more apparent it becomes that progressive sanctuary cities do absolutely nothing to help those who want to become law-abiding permanent residents.
Exactly.
Yet after the election, New York City's leaders have already announced their plans to fight tooth and nail against every immigration policy President Trump tries to enact once he takes office. Which means New York is going to become even more of a sanctuary city than it is right now.
I wonder how this is going to affect the people living in New York, because if you walk out in the streets and all these people have nothing to do, they're starting to form small communities, little gangs, do a little bit of mischief here and there. Do you think more and more and more and more and more coming in is going to be a good thing when they're already becoming homeless and they're already becoming, they could become problematic real quick? But not only that, the people living in New York can become problematic real quick, since, well, let's be honest, if they start robbing things or robbing people or doing negative things, do you really think it's like, oh yeah, I love having all these immigrants here, all these asylum seekers that aren't getting anything to do and aren't getting help to get any jobs, to just, sit and stare and catcall girls all day, whatever they do. Like, maybe they're trying every single day to get a job, but I don't know that. But how is it going to feel having 200,000 people that are living in apartments or hotels that are being paid for by you, while not even being helped getting out of those apartments, so that they can keep paying for those apartments with their tax money and then make that a cycle? It's much better to actually create a cycle of people coming in, people going out, people going into the economy. But nah.
President-elect Donald Trump promised sweeping changes to what he painted as an out-of-control immigration system. And now, with his presidency secured, immigration advocates in New York City say they're bracing for what's to come.
We're going to fight it. We're as prepared, if not more prepared than the first time around. We fought him not just in the streets.
I'm sorry, I don't want to single out this one particular person, but what is this idea? What are people fighting against? What does New...
That was my question. What's the actual reason for fighting here? Like, if something isn't working, it's not working, and we've been talking about that earlier in the video. There's no point in fighting for the sake of fighting. If it's not working, make it work. If any car doesn't work, what do? You take it to a mechanic. And if it doesn't work for 10 years, well, it's scrapped. So if you now have to scrap the policy, which hasn't been put over to a mechanic, so to speak, you scrap it and make a new one. Maybe that'll work. or at least has a chance of working.
New York City think it can do to control U.S. immigration policy. If anything, the asylum crisis proves that New York has no control over federal immigration policy.
Yep, 100%.
Because for the last 2 years, the asylum crisis has absolutely exploded here. And it's not benefiting the lives of people who fled poverty thinking they'd come here and experience heaven on earth. That has not happened at all. But what has happened is the prolonging of poverty, the prolonging of suffering and joblessness. And this all happened before Trump was even president and didn't look like he had a chance to ever get back in the White House. And if anything, the last 2 years have been a great opportunity for sanctuary cities in this country to prove how great they are and how much they can help people, but they haven't proved that. But they have proved they can harbor dangerous gang members and wanted fugitives from federal immigration.
Oh, it's almost like a satirical South Park episode at this point. Like, the episode consists of asylum seekers being told that there's gold in this country. Everybody comes and they find out they're just living in a prison cell with a bunch of inmates that are extorting them for money. Like, that's literally a South Park plot right there. And then the policymakers are going, oh, we didn't know what we're doing. And then they get a bribe from the guys that are running the asylums. Like, yeah, is it? What you talking about? Is it?
Authorities who are trying to keep people safe. We'll get to that too, but people shouldn't need free tickets to get on a bus like this if there's something here that benefits them. With this crisis not directly benefiting the very people it's named after, you've got to wonder who's actually in favor of this. Obviously, it's politicians that now see themselves as the resistance to a president that hasn't even taken office yet. It benefits the bus companies who now get to make more money transporting some of the very same people back to Texas where they got paid to bring them here. And sadly, it also benefits people who aren't allowed to legally reside in the country and are on some sort of federal wanted list. And those people are not the asylum seekers. Asylum seekers, they can reside anywhere in the country they want because they're here while they...
That's a really good thing. I actually didn't think about that. That's a really good thing to say here. Because the asylum seekers aren't actually stuck to a state. So what is the point of a sanctuary state? Sanctuary, whatever you want to call it. What's the point of it? Because if you're a legal immigrant and you're going somewhere, you can stay anywhere. So why have a Hold up, wait a minute. Is it just hiding illegals? My brain is racking. I don't understand. It's racking this.
Wait for a court date in the future. If you don't have an asylum court date, or if you have been ordered to leave the country, you've only got one choice, and that's to come to a sanctuary city. And who does that? Well, we know the gang members are doing it. They've been caught living in some of our shelters right here in New York, using them as a base to commit crime all over our city. Because we're a sanctuary city, there's nothing that can be done to remove the criminal element from places that are supposed to help people. And this small number of people is doing great damage.
Migrant gang Trendy Aragua and associates racked up 517 NYC busts this year. So it's not just a little bit, it's a lot bit.
Damage to our city, and they're causing great harm to asylum seekers who they are here to exploit. And sanctuary city status allows these folks to hide here while living relatively normal lives compared to being fugitives in other parts of the country. Here, your immigration status doesn't matter. And the scary thing about this gang is the way that they operate is through human exploitation. And how is allowing...
See, I was telling you, the South Park episode's real. It's the goddamn Oswala Gala gang or whatever they were called. They're like, oh, come over here, everybody. They're like making pamphlets and giving it out to everybody. Here, asylum seekers in every state. They're like, hey, you wanna have asylum, man? Or you need some place to stay. And then you go in, and there's like, oh, there's gonna be another $300 here for this apartment, and $400 for this, you know. But aren't we paying to the government? Whose turf do you think you're living on? You think you're living on some normal turf here? Eh? I feel bad for them, but it's kind of ironic.
Them to live in shelters where you have families and little kids who are trying to start a new life, a good idea for anybody. It's not. Yet by promising to resist and fight against Trump by putting forth policies that ultimately only benefit criminals, our leaders aren't creating a safe space for immigrants in any way, but they are creating a safe space for some very unsafe people.
Trump has promised mass deportations using the National Guard to round up immigrants and bringing back policies he put in place during his first term. Mayor Eric Adams has repeatedly pressed the current administration for federal assistance as the city's resources struggled to keep up with the wave of asylum seekers arriving in the city.
So this whole asylum crisis, it's a manufactured mess. And what does the city do? Well, they allow the mess to continue, and then they beg the federal government for money to solve it. Now, Mayor Adams is bound by the law. He has to carry out right to shelter, whether he likes it or not. And to do it, he's gonna need massive amounts of money. And the hope when this whole crisis started is that that money would come from the federal government, but it never did. But even though New York didn't receive them,
I wonder if the money did come, but it just went into something else. If you catch my drift, boys and girls. Something else.
Massive amounts of money needed to house the entire world, which is what's going to happen when you have sanctuary city status and a right to shelter. They still had to go through that, which did keep people, especially families with little kids, from having to live on the streets. Yes, right to shelter did accomplish that, and nobody wants to see families on the streets. But because we're not a law and order state, and because we're a sanctuary city, having families live in a shelter system that is also populated with gang members who are trying to recruit new members and find people who they can exploit, that's
again what I was saying. What do you think, you're gonna recruit new members somewhere random? No, you're gonna recruit it in a place where nobody can even see it, especially if there's kids. Open the door a bit so the kids can see you play with guns, and they're like, oh, so cool, guns, mommy and papi. And then mommy and papi, no, don't look in there, man. It makes no sense. I really don't understand sanctuary states right now. The more I watch, the less I understand. The more I watch, the more I feel like my brain is just like, what? Why do they even have a sanctuary state in the first place? Like, what's the actual point of it? Because if you're an asylum seeker, you could be anywhere. I understand actually having like those asylum homes, but the sanctuary state makes so little sense.
It's not a good situation either, and that's the situation we're now dealing with, and that we're now saying we're going to do everything in our power here in New York to maintain. And what's crazy is that New York City's shelters wouldn't be like this if we were not a sanctuary city. If we had a right to shelter and we still housed asylum seekers, the situation in those shelters would look very different if police were actually allowed inside, but they're not allowed in. Police can't patrol these places, but the gang members who live in them can, and they are. And these gangs are fueled by two things, which the asylum crisis here in its current state gives them: lawlessness and poverty. They've been exploiting the poor in their own countries, which is why those folks fled. And now those folks have to flee.
It's even more of a South Park episode. You see this on one plane, you have the everybody's like, wee. All the people are happy. Yeah, we're not no longer we need a Mexican cartel. And then right behind them on the same airplane, they're like and all the cartel members sitting there, going to another country just to do the same thing.
Flee again. Many of them on the very same buses that brought them here. This system is not working, yet it's going to continue in the future as a symbol of resistance and as a symbol of New York City's progressive values. Is that what's going on here? Is that why this system that's not helping anybody is going to continue? Or is there another reason? Do you think that this is part of the resistance against an incoming president who says he wants to make sweeping changes to U.S. immigration law? Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video.